welcome back to my channel, and in today's video I am going to continue upcycling these old pair of American Eagle pants that I had. And in the previous video I had turned these pants into this really cute pair of shorts that actually fit me well, and they're tailored to my waist, and I show you how to do that all in the other video, so you'll have to check that out. I'll leave a link in the description below. And in today's video we're going to finish turning the rest of the legs, the scrap fabric, into a bucket hat. With that being said, let's just get straight into the video. So here I already have the lining already made up, and as you can see it's very flimsy, so I would recommend using an interfacing, and that is also included in the pattern, which I have linked below. So the first step will obviously be to print the pattern for you, but it fits my head well. I have an ever so slightly smaller head and it's just ever so slightly larger, so I think it will be good for most patterns. And as you can see, it's very flimsy because I don't have interfacing, but I ended up liking how it looks, and the denim's a thick enough pattern, so I figured it would work just fine. So once you have your pattern all printed out, you will have to then obviously cut it out, and this leaves enough seam allowance for a 1/4 inch, so it's super helpful. You don't have to worry about leaving extra fabric. You can just cut it out to the shape you like. And here I obviously had to seam rip the leg open, which was very difficult. It took probably the most amount of time out of this whole project. So once I seam ripped it, I was able to then pin it, and I have it pinned on the fold. So you'll have to pin two separately. You will need 2 of the bucket hat crown side, and then obviously 2 of the bucket hat brims. You only need 1 of the crown top, so I wouldn't worry about necessarily putting that on the fold or anything. In fact, you'll see me here later unpin it from this spot because I found a more useful spot on the other side, and I made use of this current pant leg that I'm using with a different of the brim, I think is what I put on it. But you'll figure out the best way to work with your pants and how to line up the patterns. That is, if you're using pants. You could also just get denim yourself and it's a lot easier. I obviously just wanted to reuse the fabric that I had. And here I have all of my pattern pieces cut out for the top of the hat, or the whatever side you want. It can be reversible, but you will have to cut out the same amount for the lining. I already had the lining made, so I didn't have to worry about it. So 2 for the brim, 2 for the crown side, and 1 for the crown hat, and you will need them all cut out for you and ready to go. A total of 10 pattern pieces. Once you have all of them cut out, you are ready to start sewing. So the first thing that you will do is pin together the right sides, so that way the seam is on the outside. You'll pin together the right sides of the crown side, and you'll sew right down the side of them. And now you are just going to want to repeat the same thing with the brim of the hat. And once again, right sides together and sew down the side of them. It always helps pinning to help the fabric from moving. Once you have finished sewing, you're going to want to press those seams open to get the crispest look you can. And here comes probably the trickiest part, is you're going to be pinning the top of the crown all around the crown side. And as you can see, I forgot to cut little notches, so I had to do that just now. But when you're cutting out your fabric, definitely stop and make some notches. Anyway, now you're pinning around, and you're going to sew all the way around the top of the crown, and that way you can connect the top of the crown to the side of the crown. So now you get to do the fun part of finger pressing the seam all the way around. So you're gonna pull that seam open and press your fingers in between on both sides, the inside and the outside, to really flatten and open up that seam. It'll make it look so much more professional and very nice and crisp. So once you have your whole seam finger pressed open, you're going to want to press it towards the side of the crown, and this helps so that way it will get sewn down and not up. And then obviously you'll want to take your scissors and cut all the way around the crown, not cutting too far to the seam allowance, but just before. And this helps so that way the fabric can fold over and form to the shape of the crown. So once you have your whole seam allowance cut up so that way it can fold over, you're going to want to fold it down once again to really help it take its shape. And then what you will do is sew all the way around, connecting that seam allowance to the crown so that way it won't fall up and ruin the shape of the crown. And here is obviously me just showing you that I have the whole seam pressed up against the crown. And now to the sewing machine. Part can be really finicky, but trust me, just give it a lot of patience and love and some trial and error and you'll be able to go. Don't try to go way too fast. A lot of times slow and steady really does win the race. Okay, hard part's done. Now we get to pin the brim all the way to the crown of the hat. And this is where a lot of those notches come into place. So you can pin all of the notches and the seams together so that way you get even distribution of the fabric all around and there's not any bunching anywhere. Once you have that all stitched up, we're gonna go ahead and press it open again so that way we can get a nice crisp open seam allowance and seam. And then what we are going to do is push the whole seam allowance and press it up against the crown of the hat once again. So all of the seam allowances are being pressed against the crown of the hat, and then we will do a top stitch over to secure it. And obviously you're going to want to repeat all the same steps for the lining. And finally our hats are starting to look like hats. So here I have the main outer denim bucket hat and obviously the lining. And these are reversible, so you could wear either one. I just decided to put the denim as the main, but they are reversible. And here's where you would want to put any embroidery that you would want to do so that way you don't have to see the inside and that way you can make it reversible. And I'm just going to show you how to do a lazy daisy. So the first thing you want to do is wrap that embroidery floss around your finger a few times, then twist it off and pull down and it'll create a nice little knot. Then you're going to go put the embroidery floss through the eye of the needle, and then you're going to poke a little hole wherever you want the center of that flower to be. Wrap the embroidery floss around the needle twice, push it back in, and hold that floss so that way it doesn't pull any further, and then you'll pull that needle all the way through again right where you just put it up, and it makes this really cute little French knot. It's super easy. Then the next part you're going to do is stick the next embroidery floss color that you have on your needle and come up through the French knot. Then you're going to make your way all the way back down and then leave a small little bit so you have like a teardrop shape. You're going to come back up through there. Then you're going to go pull it tight so that way it's not too tight, but it finally catches where you pulled up. Then you're going to come back down, and there you go. There's your petal.
The feeling behind my eyes, you stood out 'cause you were in red. Then against my intentions
And to tie it off, I just simply tied it with the other color, and I did one knot ever so slightly tight because I didn't want to pull, and then the other two knots I made much tighter, so then it is nice and secure, and then you just snip it close to the knot and you don't have to worry about it.
still with you. White out skies, middle November, you and I.
we are finally ready to put these two beautiful hats into one gorgeous bucket hat. And the first thing that we are going to do is put right sides together, like always. Never want a seam showing unless it's a top stitch. And we are just going to use those notches that we used earlier and line up the same thing. So put all of the seams together, and then you're going to line up all of the notches on the brim as well, so that way we can pin those and then evenly distribute the fabric across. To have everything pinned, you're going to want to mark 3 inches apart from each other, and this is going to be so you can flip the hat inside out. So you're going to start on one side and finish on the other, leaving 3 inches unsewn. Once you've got that all sewn up, you're going to go and snip around all of the seam allowance. Not too far, again, you don't want to snip the seam, but you want to snip all around the seam allowance, that way you can fold it over. And what you're going to end up doing is pressing it open, finger pressing, and then flipping it inside out. And then you're going to go and take it to your ironing board to get a really nice crisp press, and that way it'll look really good and it'll be super easy to sew a top stitch around to hide the seam allowance underneath, and that way it doesn't lose its shape as well. Comes to the small gap that you left open, it really helps to really tuck those in, fold them down, pinch them as hard as you can. If you need to, stick a pin in there, but you're going to want to iron it especially so that way it stays nice and hidden underneath and it's super easy to sew over. Here is my nicely pressed hat, and as you can see, it's already looking much nicer and easier to sew with. Now you're going to want to sew as close to the edge as you possibly can and all the way around. That way it closes up that gap and it locks the seam allowance underneath. And there you go, that is your finished bucket hat, and you can pretty much do whatever you would like with it now. A lot of people will add a stitch across the brim, which is what I end up going and doing just to help it give a nice little secure, so where the crown and the brim meet, you just sew those nicely together. Some people will add some lines that you see on the iconic bucket hat, but I just didn't feel like doing that. I felt like the denim looked really cute just as it is, and I just love the way it came out. As you can see, the plaid is also very cute. And here's what I mean when you connect the lining to the top hat so that way it doesn't move. So there you go, guys. That is how you make your own reversible bucket hat. I think it's absolutely adorable. Love how it came out. And the best part is I got to reuse old jeans that I do not wear anymore. So again, if you want to see how I turned these into shorts, then go ahead and watch the video. I'll leave it in the description below. Also, like this video if you liked it and found it useful. I really would appreciate that. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a great rest of your day. Bye!